Hey folks, I'm Gary and Carlin, Mosses Creek Outdoors. Appreciate y'all watching. On this episode, I'm going to be giving my final words to the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and our used-to-be Division of Tennessee State Parks. My word to Big Hill Pond State Park is, well, the truth that's never acknowledged hurts, doesn't it? Hey folks, I'm Gary and Carlin, Mosses Creek Outdoors here in southwestern Tennessee. Just sitting out on the porch here at the house this morning, trying to enjoy a little bit of shade before it gets too hot. It's going to be hot again today, and I hope that there's a lot more of you out there that plans to try to stay inside or not be doing much, or at least be in a cool environment, because you're going to need it for a few days here. But the reason that I'm bringing you this specific episode is this is going to be based on a 35-year career in Department of Environment and Conservation, Parks, and Wildlife here in the state of Tennessee, involving my grandfather. And I'm going to try to do the best that I can here. I'm going to try to tell this as quick as I can, but I'm going to start here at the very beginning and go, from one step to another as years went on, and what happened. And some of this, at some point in the video, may end up not sounding very pretty, or possibly could not. And at the end of the video, I'm gonna give a special little piece of word or kind of my part of testimony that's gonna be straightforward to the Division of State Parks and Big Hill Pond and the Department of Environment and Conservation. I'm gonna kind of give the lowdown. I'm gonna tell you what I think. But to start this whole story off, my granddaddy was Johnny Wayman Carlin. He was born February the 4th, 1941. He was the son of Allen Theodore Carlin and Leslie D. Taylor, here in the southwestern portion of McNairy County, Tennessee. Some of his earlier jobs, when he began his career, he went to work in Memphis. I remember one of the first jobs that he discussed with me when I was a young kid was he just drove around and he started hunting jobs. It didn't really matter what it was. He was just looking for a job. Didn't matter what kind of business it was. He went by and put in an application. He was just looking for a job. Well, the first job that he got was building wooden fences. And I remember hearing him talk about how hard that was. Having to dig all those post holes by hand, of course, back then. And I can't remember the exact order of it here, but I do know that he was a supervisor later on in time at Memphis Frosted Foods. And my grandmother and my grandfather's brother, one of his brothers, I think best I remember, ended up working there at Memphis Frosted Foods also. And then here in the county, he worked at the old Brown Shoe Company for a good long while. And a point in time come along right there that he had applied for a job with the post office, and he had passed the testing and stuff, and he had got on the list to go work for the 3 nearest post offices close to here. But during that time, he also worked at Dover Elevators down in Middleton, Tennessee, in the edge of Hardeman County also. But during the time when he was on the waiting list with the post office, something came up that he was out on the farm working, on the home place where I grew up. And somebody come down there and got in touch with him, or come down there and found him in person and told him that there was, I don't know exactly what office it was back then, but there was an office there in the county seat of Hardeman County, which is Bolivar, Tennessee, some kind of environmental office or something, that Environment and Conservation was going to hire a supervisor. He's going to hire for a supervisor position. He hired, and he got that job. He hired as a supervisor. Supervisor was all he ever was. Well, right at that time when he got the job, he went up to Fall Creek Falls State Park up in East Tennessee, and he had a boss named Chuck Cook back then, and of course he went up to Fall Creek Falls for a couple of weeks, and it was supposed to be kind of like a training session or something. He was going up there to get a look at different campgrounds, boardwalks, and different stuff like that, to see how they were designed, how they were laid out, and just stuff of that nature. And well, he hired on to that job in November 1976, and him and one of his brothers was in the woods cutting pupwood, I believe. He hired on then, but they told him that he was going to start getting paid right then, but he didn't have to report on the job until January 1977. And he would be getting a vehicle to carry home with him every day. And well, right then, when he hired on a Big Hill Pond State Park down here, just west of me, here local, or as I'm going to phrase it in this episode, what used to be Big Hill Pond State Park, or what used to be our Tennessee state parks, what used to be. It had been declared to be a state park. Well, when he left Fall Creek Falls, him and the family, he asked if he could take his family with him. Yes, my grandmother, and there was 2 girls, 2 daughters, and they went with him up there. When they came back, he planned to do, as far as involving the projects there on the park at Big Hill Pond, and based on what he saw up at Falls Creek Falls. There wasn't anything at Big Hill Pond. I mean, it was just the property there. There hadn't been no maintained roads or anything. There wasn't no campgrounds. There wasn't no hiking trails or anything. So what happened exactly is when him and his crew started to work down there, and there was a crew of men. It kind of varied from time to time. 3, 4, 5 guys, maybe more at some point, to work under him there on the park to accomplish these different things. Like building boardwalks, building campgrounds, building hiking trails. Let's see, they built, I believe it's over 30 miles of hiking trails on the park, and he would bring little signs home at night, and my grandmother would paint the letters in on those little signs marking the names of the hiking trails. And of course the big boardwalk, well, there's 2 boardwalks at Big Hill Pond. One's going across one of the coves up there on the new lake. The big boardwalk, the Dismal Swamp Boardwalk, is a half a mile long, and it's going through the Dismal Swamp on the back side of the park next to the railroad, be just on the north side of the railroad. There's the observation tower over there. The observation tower is back up on top of a big hill on the north side of the railroad, west of the Dismal Swamp Boardwalk. And they put that tower up. My granddaddy did, and he had 3 guys helped him put that observation tower up. It's just like a fire tower. It's 70 foot high, just like a fire tower. It's all caged in, and it's just got a rail around the top of it. It's open on top. It's not closed in with windows or nothing like a fire tower. I guess it was probably an old ex-fire tower from many years ago. Probably, I assume. But a lot of people calls that tower at Big Hill Pond a fire tower. I'm going to tell you now. It might have been at one time. But this day and time, it is not a fire tower. It was put up intending to be an observation tower. But my granddaddy and Jesse Does and Marlin Taylor and Robert Berkeley put that tower up. Marlin Taylor's around here local. Jesse Does is right down here in the edge of Hardeman County at Pocahontas. And Robert Berkeley, he was from down around Bolivar area in Hardeman County there. But you know, I've talked to some of these other guys about the work done down there and all, you know, and they have filled me in on some stuff. And of course, one of them told me, said, you know, when we was putting that big observation tower up, you know, they thought that was really something, you know. They was all over there wanting to make pictures and didn't know what all else. And well, you know, kind of the point here to where I'm going to make my shift to what I'm getting at here on this episode is after everything that was accomplished on the park at Big Hill Pond, as far as everything that's there today for the public to enjoy, I started on a situation about 4 years ago to where I wanted to get something at the park named after my granddaddy, or named in memory of him, or ever how you want to put that, or like a dedication thing or something like that. So, you know, I had to do a good long bit of work, you know, for a good while. I bet you it took me close to 3 years before I ever found the right person to talk to. But I just kind of wanted to see, you know, my grandfather recognized for something because all of his hard work and sweat that he put in with the crew working at Big Hill Pond. And there was another guy named Playas Woods that also worked with them down there. And Playas died while he was working down there. But what I started on was again, that I wanted to do a dedication thing. Well, I knew that Chickasaw State Park back up here, they had dedicated a boardwalk across the lake of Chickasaw in memory of the guy. And that was on the news and everything. And I called the park manager at Chickasaw and talked to him. And of course he told me what the process was, you know, what happened, who the family talked to, and more kind of exactly of what they done and all. So, as time went on, I ran into Tennessee State Senator Paige Wally, which was a waste of time. I ran into him at another, like a event type thing. Which Paige, he always knew my granddad. The whole time my granddad worked in wildlife conservation. He always had a lot of dealings with Paige, you know, with work involving conservation or along the waterways across West Tennessee here. And I mean, I heard my granddaddy speak to Paige ever since that, you know, I was a small kid. Well, at that point in time, Paige had never met me. And I approached him that day. Told him who I was. I told him what I was wanting to do, or what I was wanting to try to do. And he said, well, I'll tell you what I want you to do. I want you to write me a letter stating what you want to do and why. And he said, and we'll get it done. To which Page ended up doing everything but nothing. Exactly nothing. Time drug on there for a little while, and close to a year, or a little over a year. And I hadn't heard from him or anything. I had done wrote him the letter. He had done had the letter in hand close to a year, that he asked me to write, telling him what I wanted to do and why. And I just sent him a personal message. And I told him, I said, or I asked him, if this can be done or whatever. We was asking for the Dismal Swamp, the family. We was asking for the Dismal Swamp boardwalk, the half-a-mile boardwalk and the observation tower to be dedicated in memory of my granddad for all his hard work all them years. I told Paige, I said, I would like to go ahead and get started on this and get it done if we possibly could. And well, my message sits there for maybe 24 hours. He pops me a message back and he says, I just believe there's too big of a competing interest. I was like, what do you mean a competing interest? There's no competing interest, or conflict of interest, whichever competing interest or conflict of interest, whichever way you want to put it. There's no conflict of interest about anything. My granddad is the one that, and his crew's the one that built everything down there on the park. Like that half-a-mile Dismal Swamp boardwalk. It's all his design. He's the one that done it. The observation tower is only there on the park today because my granddad was working over at Chickasaw State Park and he found that observation tower unassembled, stacked up. And he contacted Nashville and told them that he found the tire, as I've stated on videos actually giving some of this testimony actually from the top of the observation tire up there. He contacted Nashville and they gave him permission to bring that tire to Big Hill Pine and put it up for people out there like you to enjoy. And that's what they done. The people at Chickasaw loaded that whole tire on a big trailer and delivered it down here to Big Hill Pine. And they got somebody in there with a track hoe to dig, for the concrete footings. And then my granddaddy and those other three guys, they put the whole thing up. But again, Paige Wally, he extremely surprised me. But I don't know. I don't see how anything gets done. He can't stop eating at restaurants and making pictures with people all over the country. So I don't see how anything, or hardly anything in Nashville ever gets done. But again, I guess this would be my word, Paige. Competing interest, conflict of interest, which the director of operations in the state parks has already said there's no competing interest. Where does that even involve the subject? And the boardwalk across the lake at Chickasaw was dedicated to a guy, in memory of a guy that used to be the park manager over there. Well, the dedication was done, and he didn't even build it. My granddaddy built all of this stuff. So, to go on with it here, after the discouraging situation with Paige Wally, I contacted the main office at Nashville of state parks. Once again, what used to be our state parks. And of course, I've always been a government employee here in the state of Tennessee myself, and and I've worked with them in parks and all that, and all this rinky-dink crap that they got going on when it comes to different jobs and stuff that they do. But anyway, I contacted the state parks main office at Nashville again, talking to them about this situation. Finally, they put me in touch with a man that's the director of operations for state parks, which is Mike Robertson. And 2 or 3 days later, Mike Robertson got in touch with me. And I told him, what was going on, what the situation was. Well, he set up a meeting. Mike did. He said, I'm going to come down there and I'm going to look at all your information you got, which we got, all these plaques, these awards, different certificates that my granddad got over the years for his different accomplishments in his job. And we got copies of old newspapers showing pictures where they was working on that stuff at Big Hill Pond down here. Used to be Big Hill Pond. Well, Mike Robertson, he's just set up a day to come down to look at that stuff and get copies of it and take it back to Nashville. So I go down there on the day to used to be the park, and I meet Robertson and the park manager there at the park office. We go upstairs and spread all this stuff out on the table. We talk about it again, what I'm going to do. So, Mike Robertson, the director of operations there, he actually comes out and asked me, after we've explained and talked about all this now, was your granddad actually an employee for conservation, or was he an employee of Tennessee state government? I said, yes, he was. I said, he had 16 to 18 different work trucks, government trucks over the years that he always kept at home. He kept a lot of the used to be Big Hill Pond State Park and environment conservation property at our house when I was growing up. And why? To keep it from getting stolen. Because, they had a couple of different offices around down here, and they had a hard time keeping stuff because people stole so much stuff that they had, boat motors, chainsaws, and all that. But he kept, all kinds of equipment, chainsaws, boat motors, truck, dozer, four-wheelers, boats, boat motors, all that different kind of stuff. He had to keep a lot of that stuff at home. It couldn't be out here in some little field office or shop or something somewhere. People, they'd steal it. And but about a couple of days prior to that meeting, I was looking through a box of his stuff, had a bunch of his paperwork and old maps and stuff in it, and I found this little card that had my granddad's name on it, and it was a Tennessee state government employee identification card, and that little card was identifying him as an actual employee of Tennessee state government. And if it hadn't been for that, Robertson would have never even believed that my granddaddy ever even worked in conservation or for parks. But anyway, Robertson, he got all these different old copies, these newspapers, and all this paperwork, and he took all of it back to Nashville. And a pretty good little while drug on right there. And he said that he would contact me and let me know. Well, I guess it was, I don't know, a couple of months went on or something like that. I get an email back from Mike Robertson, and he says he's just going to let me know that nothing can be done because state parks used to be our state parks. They have this dedication / in memory of policy thing to where there's like, Robertson said, like 9 different categories. And well, the work that my granddad and his crew performed all over that park, and in many parks, they perform. Just about every state park used to be state park in West Tennessee holds some part of their work. But they have this policy thing to where just one part of their work, I can't remember how it's put, has to involve just one part of these 9 different categories. And they're saying all that work performed on that park, it don't touch any of all these 9 different categories, not even part of one of them. You're telling me that? But anyway, just a very, very discouraging situation. I worked on this deal here for 3 or 4 years, trying to get it done. And the guy that used to be the park manager for so long down there, when my granddaddy was working down there, I saw him about 6 months after he retired, after the guy that was the manager retired. He said, I sure was hoping we could get something done for you, granddaddy, while I was still working, I was like, well, you knew for 3 or 4 years before you retired that we was wanting to do something. We first was asking just for a plaque to be put up down there, kind of telling a story about something on a post. And then we asked for the dedication. So, I just can't understand it. Over many, many years, Big Hill Pond has been featured in the county papers around here. It's been featured in the Tennessee Magazine. And there's somebody else always taking credit for something that my granddad and his crew built. They will never mention that, because you know what? That's the hard part to talk about. They don't want to talk about it because that's the truth. But over the years, as far as with my channel here on YouTube involving different subjects of the outdoors, I had planned for Big Hill Pond to be a big part of, different episodes of whatever they might be over the years. But as it stands right now, this is my last and final episode discussing Big Hill Pond. What used to be Big Hill Pond. That's the way it is now. It ain't the Big Hill Pond that it used to be. And there's a lot of other people around here that tell you that same thing right now. Also, something else was involving the trails was there was a guy told me that there was some guy from Memphis that was what was he? He said the guy was a landscaping architect, and he done some kind of layout for the hiking trails. I talked to guys that worked with my granddad about that, and they said it wasn't true. And they said they had never heard of the guy. And one of the guys the other day told me that, yeah, when it come to the hiking trails, as far as the layout of them and all that, and where put them and stuff, there was kind of a trails plan that was directed down to my granddad from Nashville. But other than that, he said everything else was my granddad's idea. He named the trails. My granddad did. It's like Turkey Call Trail down there. He named that trail Turkey Call Trail because they heard a turkey gobbling when they was working on it. But over the years, it's just, there's been different articles and stuff, and somebody else is always taking credit. They'll never mention where all the work come from down there. Never mention it. But and there was another one of the guys that also worked with my granddad that went over there to the observation tower back several years ago. And the guy that's the manager now was the ranger back then. Well, during that time, the guy that worked with my granddaddy that went over to the tower, he took a big black magic marker and he just wrote right on the tip of the handrail on the observation tower or something there, is what he was telling me. This tower was built by, and then he signed their 4 names. And he told me that a few days later, the guy that was the ranger there, he run into him at a store. And he told him, he said, "I'm just going to let you know," he said, "I found your graffiti on the tire, or saw your graffiti on the tire," or something like that. He said, "Huh, graffiti, huh?" He said, "Do y'all not ever give nobody any credit for anything down there?" And I'm going to read you this quick 3-page letter that I wrote to Senator Paige Wally. Psalms chapter 128 verse 2 says, "You shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be blessed, and it shall be well with you. This verse describes Johnny W. Carlin and his work ethic. Mr. Carlin was born in McNairy County in 1941, the son of Allen Theodore and Leslie Carlin, and the brother to one sister and 3 brothers. Mr. Carlin married his wife Joyce in 1961 and raised their children in McNairy County. Mr. Carlin's wife, children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren still call McNairy County home. Mr. Carlin was a hard worker and provided for his family very well. Beginning in 1959, working at the Memphis Zoo along with building fences around the town, to then working at Memphis Frosted Foods as a supervisor. No matter the job, Mr. Carlin always worked his hardest, was not a complainer, and provided for his family. In November 1976, Mr. Carlin was hired by the Tennessee Department of Conservation as a conservation worker supervisor. During his 33 and a half years, Mr. Carlin and his crew spent many years working to improve accessibility to all the state parks in West Tennessee. His biggest project was making Big Hill Pond accessible to the public. Mr. Carlin and his crew worked many years building all the accessibility points that are still at Big Hill Pond today. From the boat ramps, campgrounds, bathhouses, observation tower, and the boardwalks. Mr. Carlin and his crew built them all. Many years later, Mr. Carlin worked for the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency as a wildlife technician supervisor, as well as the West Tennessee River Basin Authority as an equipment operator supervisor. He retired on March the 10th, 2010. Mr. Carlin departed this life in May 2011. To honor his years of dedication to the state of Tennessee, as well as Big Hill Pond State Park, we, the family, are asking that the Dismal Swamp Boardwalk and Observation Tower be named and dedicated to Mr. Carlin. We appreciate your time and effort in making this idea happen. You know, it's just the work back then when my granddad was working. I mean, it was just all around different, you know, than this rinky-dink crap that they have going on with jobs nowadays, like I've been involved with. And you know, again, and while you know a lot of the work was being performed, a lot of people want to make pictures, you know, and of course it get put in different papers and stuff, you know, all but not put their name on it, who was doing it though or nothing. You know, that's another thing. If my granddad and his crew could have just been mentioned in some of the newspapers and magazines when it come to those accomplishments on the park, that's all that it would have took to made his family happy for these years. But when you just leave him out of it, you know, that ain't no way to be. I'll tell you what, he may not be awarded anything here on earth for his accomplishments within used to be our state parks, but I can guarantee you that he is in heaven, or has been in heaven. But you know, the history of all the real work, what it is and where it came from, and the working hands that done it, you know, will never be erased. The history of it will always be there and will always be remembered and passed down within the family, of course. So you are telling me that nearly a 35-year career in this and nothing can be done? You just tell me once again why. But I've got a special word here that last thing that I'm going to read off. This is basically going to be my piece of testimony to the Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation and the Division of Tennessee State Parks, and used to be Big Hill Pond State Park. Big Hill Pond State Park, the history won't be erased. And guess what? The truth hurts, doesn't it? It hurts. The truth hurts. But you know, after this, until the last day that I live, and I have this channel and involving the outdoors as Moss's Creek Outdoors, I will never acknowledge Big Hill Pond as being a state park again. I will never acknowledge any park or what used to be a park in the state of Tennessee as a state park. Unless there's only one way out of it with my thoughts. Unless somebody can come up with something to change something right down here on this state park. It don't matter what it is. Long as it's involving putting up a memory plaque or a dedication plaque, that could be all it could be, you know. Great. Or still any of the in-memory dedication stuff. It don't really matter what it is, you know. Just do something for all the hard years of sweat and working, you know, to be recognized for, you know, for further generations or later generations to come in this life. But again, to Big Hill Pond and conservation, the truth that you won't never state or include in newspaper articles or magazine articles or whatever, that's the problem. That's the problem. That's why that until something changes, I'm not doing any more episodes. I'm not discussing the used to be Big Hill Pond State Park anymore. Like I say, like I said in the beginning, some of this may end up not sounding, you know, the prettiest, which it hasn't. So, but I just been looking at planning and doing this episode, you know, for a while, having this discussion on the kind of the lowdown of Big Hill Pond down here. So, but you know, everybody else, they always want to take credit for something they didn't do. Something that my granddad and his crew done when it was first declared to be a park. Well, somebody else wants to take credit for it. They want to get an article wrote up, you know, and get their picture made standing beside it, and you know, and take credit for it. So, until next time, out in the great outdoors, involving whatever it might involve. I'm Garen Carlin, Moss's Creek Outdoors, and I also encourage you to get outdoors also. And I'll see you next time.